Welcome to the Things I Wish I'd Known podcast, where guests share learning from life experiences to help others on the same path. Welcome everyone to the Things I Wish I'd Known podcast. I'm really happy today to welcome our guest, who today is Giles Paley-Phillips, the multiple award-winning author of a number of children's books, including The Fearsome Beastie, Little Belle and the Moon, and Things You Never Knew About Dinosaurs. Hi, Giles.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for being here. It's brilliant to have the opportunity to speak to you and hear some of your experiences and some of the things that you wish you'd known earlier in your journey. So, as well as being a best-selling and award-winning author, you're also in a band called Burnt House and the co-host of a podcast called The Blank Podcast, where you interview guests like Louis Theroux, Gary Lineker and Roisin Connerty about those moments in life where your mind goes blank.
Yeah, wow. It does sound like I'm really busy.
Got lots going on.
Yeah, I have, yeah. Yeah, and this was nice because it's nice to have lots of different things going on as well.
Yeah.
You know, not just doing the one thing. So I'm quite lucky in that respect. If I'm getting sort of tired or haven't got any, I guess if the creative juices aren't flowing for one, I can pick up another thing and run with that. So that's quite nice.
Yeah, lovely. So you're a creative man. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know where it comes from really. I wasn't very good at school. I wasn't very academic. And the only thing I think the only GCSE I passed was English,
right?
Randomly. So I think writing was always going to be a thing. But at college I started getting into music more, and I met up with some guys that were also into music, and we started a band, and I was into like writing music and then lyrics and stuff like that as well. And we kind of, like most things I've done, I've kind of like learnt along the way, like learnt on the job kind of thing, you know, because I wasn't particularly great at playing the guitar, but I kind of learnt to play the guitar. And I never wanted to play other people's songs. I think there was lots of cover bands when I was at college, and I never wanted to play other people's stuff. Always wanted to write my own stuff. So it's kind of been learning along the way.
Yeah. And where's sort of your books and the writing fitted into that part of the journey?
Well, I kind of did. Yeah, so I did music from college kind of onwards, and then I really, really wanted to become. That was it. That was the dream, to become a professional musician and tour with a band and stuff. And then I did that for a number of years, and then the band broke up.
Oh no.
Yeah. We'd done some really big, heavy touring and like some big festivals and stuff. And I think we were just getting to a point where, I don't know, we were probably getting on each other's nerves a little bit.
Oh really? It was one of those.
Yeah. And we weren't quite making it. We had a management deal and we'd released a couple of EPs, but we hadn't quite moved up to the next level. And I think it was just a point where it's a kind of a make or break kind of moment. And I think we decided to break, and so the singer kind of went and found a new job to do, and he got into that, and so broke up. So then and then I didn't know what. I was sort of a bit lost for a while creatively, and I was working in retail and kind of bumbling along, not really trying to find my way a little bit creatively. I was still doing stuff with like one of the members of the band, and we were still writing, but we kind of knew then, though, almost immediately, that it was going to be just become a hobby, though. It wasn't going to be...
Right.
We'd gone from being like, just really wanting to make it, and then we almost kind of like overnight, it was kind of like, actually, this isn't going to be a thing I'm going to do long term. And then I found out my wife was pregnant, and we were going to have a child, so I think that's what really started the idea of writing and wanting to write something for him as a sort of special thing that would be something we could do together, you know, because what I love about children's books in particular is that having that time together, that story time, which is always very special, a special time to sort of download with each other and talk about various different things, and so that was kind of my dream, was then to like write a story for him.
Oh, lovely. And what was the first story that you wrote?
So I really struggled at first when I was trying to come up with ideas for it, because the ideas are the hardest thing, really. Although writing in general is hard, but coming up with ideas. And I was working in retail. I was working in a toy shop, which it was really fun actually. I used to love. I really loved that job actually. But I was really struggling to come up with ideas, and I was starting to look around at other people's work, seeing how they crafted you know, because I'd done poetry and like written lyrics and stuff like that. But obviously, it's very different from writing a children's book, and especially a narrative. And so I remember one day I was at work and I went out on my lunch break. I used to go for walks, and I still do now. Go for walks if I'm sort of having any creative sort of issues. And so I went up I used to work in this town called Lewis, and there's lots of really nice charity shops that sell really nice books and clothes and all sorts of things. And I was in this one particular charity shop, and I found this book by an author called Shel Silverstein, who's an American author. He's kind of like... So you go in schools in England, you say Roald Dahl, everyone knows who Roald Dahl is. Mm-hmm. In America, Shel Silverstein's the same, has the same impact. Okay. So every child has got a Shel Silverstein book in their library, you know, at home and at school. He's really popular. But I'd never heard of him, and he does these kind of kooky illustrations and sort of nonsense poetry, kind of Spike Milligan-esque. Yeah. Very short, funny. And then it turned out he'd written like lyrics for Johnny Cash and stuff like that. So he was a great lyricist as well. And it's just this fantastic book. It's called A Light in the Attic. Mm-hmm. And I just started reading it in the shop, and it just suddenly like one of those light bulb moments. And I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. This is exactly what I want to write. So I ran back to work and I wrote my first story, which was about dinosaurs. Okay. Which is actually just about to be re-released in next spring. So yeah, so that was how it started really. So and then there was the sort of floodgates open, and I started writing all the time then, and it was like one of those amazing moments, you know, when you kind of think, oh, this is it. This is what I found my thing.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So were you always quite creative then, from very little?
I don't think I was. No, I don't really remember. I say it wasn't really until I got, because I never really found my thing at school. I was quite sporty. I used to really like athletics, and I kind of wanted to be. I think I wanted to be a footballer. I've always been in football, but no, I kind of always knew I wasn't good enough. But it was a dream for a while. I remember going to see the school careers officer, and he said, "What do you want to? You know, what are you into? What do you want to do?" I was like, "I just want to be a professional footballer." And I think he must have seen me play because he was kind of like, are you sure?
Wow.
All those moments when, you know, it must have been really hard for him to like crushing his child, you know. And I remember thinking, no, maybe he's right. And he sort of like was trying to persuade me to become a physio or something like that. And I was like, no, I'm going to be a professional footballer. How dare you suggest I could be anything less? But obviously he was right. So there's funny those moments you have in, you know, when it sort of, when someone sort of spells it out to you a little bit, not directly, but you kind of realise, or have a moment of realisation that actually the thing that you want to do is not actually the thing that you end up doing. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
it's quite an early age to be told that you can't follow your dream of being a footballer, right? So
I know, and there's a kind of like, there's a concept now, but you know, like I've read things about like the 10,000 hours kind of thing, where you can like, you know, if you practice enough, you can get good at something. Yeah. I'm not sure about the professional footballer thing, but so in theory you could you can put your mind to anything, but obviously that wasn't the thing.
And it wasn't that you wanted to be a writer from very young?
No, not at all. No, never. I mean, if you said to me, I don't know, even a teenage me, I was going to say I was going to go younger then, but like even a teenager me, like you end up being a writer, doing podcasts and being in a band, I would have thought, what are you talking about? That's like, I'd never thought about any of those things. Yeah. You know, so I think sport was the thing I was really into, and then that didn't work out, so I was very lost actually. I think the college years, and I really struggled. I think I really struggled because I didn't do very well in my GCSEs, and then I went to college because everyone else went to college. I think I was just lost kind of in life generally. Home life wasn't great, and I kind of started, you know, you start drinking, you start going out, and I mean, I had the band kind of started around that time, but what I was going to do in life, I didn't. I was very lost actually. Yeah.
The undercurrent to all of this, you've got a quite similar story to me. as in being a bereaved child quite early on, and also we both lost our mums early on. I was 15, but you were only 6 at the time, weren't you? And I wonder, because I had a very similar experience with school, where I at GCSE age was like, I don't want to do this. I don't really know what I'm going to do. I can't see a future for me because, well, this horrendous thing's just happened with losing my mum. So, but that actually happened like in my exam period. But I do wonder if, you know, with bereavement and loss of a parent, whether the impact of feeling quite lost kind of persists in life. I don't know. What was your experience of losing your mum at 6?
Well, obviously being so young, I think I was probably... My brother was older. My brother's 6 years older than me, so he was sort of 11, 12 at the time. And I think he probably bore the brunt of stuff a lot more than I did in regards to... He was a lot more aware. I think I was shielded a lot, being so young. And... yeah, mollycoddled probably quite to a certain extent. It wasn't really talked about either. I remember even the day my mum died. I remember it was quite near Christmas. I remember bounding down the stairs, you know, like full of the joys. You know, I think it was the 17th of December she'd passed away. You know, and all the Christmas decorations are up. You're excited. I finished school, and I remember going into the living room. My dad was there, clearly upset. And my nan, his mum, who was a real character, she was clattering around I remember it distinctly because she was clattering around in the kitchen, like I think she must have broken a pot of tea or something, because it was just like this big crash, and just like, oh God, now what's she doing, you know, because she was always like just a calamity. And actually, you know, I can look back now and think that's actually quite a funny moment in this, like, you know, I was about to sit down with my dad, he's about to tell me my mum's died, and Nan's like like breaking crockery in the kitchen. Yeah, and it was, and kind of all he said was mum's gone, and that was it really. Mum's gone, and you know, we didn't like, I mean maybe he did, it's got out of my mind. I mean I distinctly remember that, but I don't remember any kind of like, do you need to talk, or do you want to talk about it, or should we do something, or it was kind of like that's it. And then, you know, almost felt like now I was kind of probably a grandparent probably came in and shepherded me away into another room or something. So it was never really talked about, and even moving on from that, we didn't really, certainly I wasn't really talked to about it, not that I recall in my memory, because obviously you don't really retain a lot of memories from that age. I kind of only remember that, and then sort of bouncing to the funeral day. So you know, I don't have a lot of strong memories of that time particularly. Yeah, I think it's like we talked about, it does sort of pop out later on, and suddenly it hits you. Yeah, like at a certain, I'm trying to think when it really did hit me. Probably around 18, 19. I probably started to feel it a lot more.
And there's also that real ambiguity around the wording of mum's gone. Like, what does that mean to a 6-year-old?
Yeah, exactly.
Is there meaning to that? You might have been thinking she's gone where? To the shops, or is she coming back?
I think I knew, just because of I knew she'd been unwell. She was getting she was in hospital. You know, she'd gone into a coma. Oh wow. Although I only knew that later. Right. In fact, only not that long ago, actually. My brother told me that. Because it's always, again, it's... Because now my father's passed away as well, there's not really any... I haven't got anyone to give me an account of it. But yeah, it's very vague. And I talked about this on another interview about it, the vagueness of that kind of response from my dad. But I guess he just didn't know how else to... It's almost like he didn't want to say the word died. Yeah. Yeah, it's painful. It was much more soothing to say gone than died or dead. I think actually, thinking about it now, I did have a problem with those words throughout my life, saying dead and died. I think, and even now, if I say it gives me a bit of a shiver. And that's, and I'm really okay about talking about death and dying, and I know it's part of our life cycle, but yeah, there's still a kind of, and I don't know if it's an English thing, maybe we're just a bit kind of averse to those words.
Just skirt around it.
Yeah.
Be quite ambiguous. It's interesting. So you're obviously the youngest in your family. And my experience, I'm the eldest.
You're the oldest, okay.
And being a girl was sort of put into the mother role very early on. But I know for my younger siblings, there was that ambiguity as well. And my youngest sister was 9
okay.
at the time.
Yeah, so very young, yeah.
And she had the same thing of, is she coming back? You know, she didn't really process that actually dead means gone, or, you know, that gone means not coming back.
Yeah, yeah.
And it took till much, much later to process that. Probably like, you're talking 5 years to say, oh, she's not coming back. Which is just huge, isn't it, for a child?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, in the sort of spirit of the podcast, is there anything that you would share with your younger self, or even with the people around you, in how to manage situations like that? Because it can be really difficult.
Well, my wife, who also has lost her father in her teen years, and I have always been really open with our children about it. So, you know, from a young age, I think kids go through an age where they're kind of intrigued about death. I don't know if they learn something perhaps it's talked about during social studies at primary school or something, but certainly there is a natural inquisitiveness about death and dying. And so we've always been fairly open with them about, you know, where their grandparents have gone. So, you know, they've still got one my wife's mum is still alive, so they've still got one, and she's remarried, so they've got a set of grandparents. But they've always been intrigued about where my parents have gone, and, like, you know, my wife's real father. So we've always tried to be fairly open with them about it from an early age. And I would say that is probably something, definitely. I mean, obviously we've talked about it this morning, being open and talking and having those conversations would have really helped, I think, just to process it. Yeah. And not think, okay, we'll just, you know, cotton wool around that and put a band-aid on it, and hopefully it will heal itself. And then, you know, you look under the band-aid many years later. Yeah, and there's a weeping wound under there that's gushing out, and you haven't been able to heal at all. And so I think that is. So if I could say something to the people around, I would say that have those discussions and talk openly about those things before and after. I mean, I think that's the thing. There was no my mum had been terminally ill. I mean, we had an old video actually of my mum on, because she was a local councillor. So there was a video which is really nice to have of me and her on the local news programme, and it's her talking about it, and she knew she was terminally ill. So, you know, and she talks about coping with it. Now, if I'd seen that when I was that age, I could have had a chance, but I was never shown it until much later in life. Right.
So you had absolutely no preparation for the fact that she was going to die? So no real closure or... No. With her?
Whereas if there'd been some sort of preparation in place, like, you know, Mum is really, you know, she might not... When she goes into hospital, I remember saying goodbye to her for the last time. If I'd known, you know... Again, that was kind of like... I didn't know it was the last time I was going to see her, but probably everyone else around knew that was going to be the last time. So it is, yeah.
Yeah. And we were sort of saying earlier how I think when you're a child, it can be your difficult feelings trigger off big difficult feelings in adults that they don't really want to feel.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like your loss as a little person is really difficult for adults who want to just fix it and make it better and make you not feel sad. And in that sense, we kind of tend to take adults' feelings a bit more seriously than we do children's, and children can tend to be shut down in their feelings or
absolutely
wanting to talk.
Yeah, and also maybe a bit of selfishness, like, I can't be dealing with this child as well. I'm dealing with all this stuff. Yeah. You know, I'm dealing with my own stuff. Yeah. I've got to deal with the child as, you know. I'm not saying that sounds pretty brutal, but, you know, it could have been.
Yeah, and it could be a subconscious thing, right? We do all sorts of things to protect ourselves.
Yeah, of course.
From feeling horrible feelings.
Yeah.
It's like what you were saying about not having much memory. For the brain does amazing things for children to help them not feel stressed.
Yeah,
like
of course.
Blanking out trauma.
Yeah.
And not remembering it. So yeah, it brings up all sorts of stuff. So I guess it's tough to know really how to have those conversations with children and use appropriate language. But I suppose what you're saying is there has to be a level of honesty.
Yes. And
you kind of have to be straightforward with what you're actually saying.
Yeah, the language. Yeah. Basically, to the base thing of the language needs to be like you say, more straightforward and actually spell it out a little bit. Yeah. And yes, it might sound like a brutal way of doing things, but I think honesty is so important with children. We just, otherwise, you create something that's going to be damaging later, I think.
Yeah. And also children have these amazing little brains where they'll take something that they've heard and create a whole fantasy around what that actually means. Yeah. And it can go off in all kinds of tangents. So that sounds like really good advice. So in your book, Little Bell in the Moon, that's a book about mortality and death, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah, so I start, again, like I said earlier, having honest conversations with our children about death and dying and life cycles and stuff. And we started having conversations about my mum and he'd asked, where is she now, kind of thing, and we're not religious in a way, so it was kind of like, she's in our hearts and not minds. And we were walking to school for, they had like a bedtime story thing, so it was really not nice sort of winter evening, and the moon was out full and the stars in the sky and everything, and he just looked up at the sky and said, Daddy, when you look at a star, it touches your heart. Just really sort of profound, weird, like kind of thing for a 6-year-old. So it was very sweet. And I was like, what do you mean? And you sort of saying about, so well, like your mum, and I kind of like the idea of there's that whole thing about like we turn to stardust when we die and that kind of thing. So that kind of was the basis of the story, and then just a story about little Belle who goes on these trips with the moon and has this very fun, fulfilled life, sees the world and has these joyous times, sees the world in a beautiful way, and it's a life cycle. So it's we see her, have her own child, get old, and then she passes away and goes and becomes a star in the sky, and rests with the moon. And really, I wrote it because I wanted other people to perhaps have that chance to have that conversation, even just to have the conversation about death in the safe environment of a bedtime story, because I think it's such a brilliant part of the day that we still do with our children, is reading to them before bedtime, because it is a chance for them to download about their days. And actually, if you are reading books that have some message in them, then it's a chance for them to open up about them or discuss any worries they might have, or just if they're intrigued about something. And that's the amazing thing about sort of picture books and stuff. You can talk about big topics at a very young age, and obviously, again, going back to my own age, we didn't have any books like that. I'm sure there might have been books like that around, but certainly I wasn't introduced to any, and it would have been another way of talking about those experiences. So that was kind of the idea of it, and hopefully, hopefully it has helped some people. I mean, I've had loads of messages since it came out from people saying, I've bought it because we've got a relative that's passed away, or we've got a relative that's terminally ill, or whatever it might, so we can have those discussions with people. It's been really, because some of the messages have brought me to tears at points. So they've been really poignant, and it's been amazing, really, how many people have used it for that, as a resource for that kind of stuff, because it's so that's great, because that's kind of what it was for.
Yeah, that sounds brilliant. And I suppose it'd be good for any child to have access to that book, whether they're facing bereavement or not.
Yeah,
because actually it's part of life.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And it's a very gentle rhyming story. It's nothing, it's very it'd be a nice, relaxing kind of read at any time of day. It doesn't have to be at bedtime, but for people to have that conversation. And I think that's the thing. It's hard for adults, so as we spoke earlier, to have conversations like that with children, and maybe this is a way in.
Yeah, that's safe for them.
Yeah,
and on their level.
Yeah.
So I know in a couple of your books, there's kind of this heroic grandma figure.
Yeah.
Particularly in your books about where there are monsters, and the grandma steps in and she's kind of the hero. I wondered if that was reflective of your own experience.
Yeah, it totally actually. Yeah, I had really good relationships with both grandparents. I had my mum's grandparents, Bill and Queenie, were fantastic, and actually, my dad wasn't the best person. He wasn't the best person. He wasn't just a very good dad. He was also not a very good person. So they stepped in big time and helped a lot. And I used to stay with them quite a lot. And actually, Queenie was like a mum, really. And so I was lucky in that respect, because not everyone has that. And then my father's mum, the smasher of plates and crockery, who was a bit of a legend, really, because she was so funny. She used to take us on day trips to London and stuff like that. And she'd live with us for a long time, actually. She sort of moved in, and then we couldn't get rid of her. But she was funny to have around. Terrible at cooking. She used to make fried breakfast, and they were just revolting.
Oh, really?
Yeah, go wrong. Well, yeah, you go wrong with the fried breakfast, but like the sausages would be all mashed up. It's just like this. Yeah, it's just terrible. So she was a real character. So I had these other people in my life, and and certainly, funny enough, actually, in the Fierce and Beastie, which is my first picture book, there is a granny that wields an axe, and that is her, definitely, and my paternal grandmother, because she was feisty. Terrible language as well. Like, she was from the north. I'm sorry, I'm not tarring like the north with this, but she was from Durham, and she was just quite an uncouth woman. Right. She was great. I loved her. Yeah. Lots, and it was great to hang out with her. She used to make me stand outside the betting shop. This is like the summer holidays. I'd be standing outside the betting shop where she'd go in and place her bets on the greyhound racing.
Right.
And I used to have to stand outside. It was the days when the betting shops had those coloured tassels over the door. So you could kind of see in, like, this horrible smoky. Oh, it's horrible. And I could see her in the far side with her little pencil and a pen, like all her bets.
She sounds like a character.
And actually, she's so my next book, 152 Days, she figures quite big in that. She's a major character in that. So grandparents have come up a lot or grandmothers actually, have come up a lot in, because they filled a void that was there, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's probably the case for lots of kids, especially even whether bereaved or not. With parents who work a lot, grandparents are often just secondary parents, aren't they, these days?
Absolutely, very much so.
So your book 152 Days then, so this is a different type of book, not a children's book. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the
I'd
story
love to,
here?
So, it started off, it's sort of semi-memoir, I guess, or semi-autobiographical, although there is still quite a lot of fiction in there. Obviously, the main protagonist isn't named in it, but it's a teenage version of me, I guess. And dealing with having a terminally ill mother and then a father who is estranged and is sort of descending into a world of alcoholism, which again is similar to my own experiences. And then he has to sort of hang around with his nutty grandmother. Hanging there outside the betting shop. And then he meets this... so when I was... Around the time my mum was coming to the end of her life, I had really bad pneumonia, and I had to go into hospital. And she'd be upstairs in one of the rooms, and I'd be downstairs having physiotherapy. So I had to have... Because I had so much crap on my lungs, I had to have physio to get it out. So the protagonist in the story is having physio, and he meets this physio who kind of, so that's his kind of more the fictional part of it, is he sort of meets this physio who becomes a sort of light in his life, a bit of hope, and he finds he falls in love with her, but she sort of brings a lightness to his life and sort of allows him to see the world in a less sort of dark place. So that's kind of the concept of the book.
And is there a reason that you wrote it from a teenage perspective rather than a child?
I wanted, because the themes in it are more for older. I mean, it's actually going to be released as an adult book now because we felt that the themes were adult, really,
right.
Although the protagonist is a teenager.
Yeah.
And I kind of always kind of hoped it would be more of an adult book because I think it really fits well for an adult audience. Although I think, older teens will probably find something in it as well. But I think it was more because I wanted to write about those feelings I was having as a teenager. Like I was saying, like 18, 19, those feelings that started to come out about loss and death and bereavement and all the other adjectives I can use for it. And it's about those feelings, and I wanted to write about those feelings. So that's kind of why I made it an older child.
And so I wonder if you had some advice for your teenage self.
Yeah, I think it's a thing that I get told all the time, and it will be okay.
Yeah. Hard to believe it in the moment.
It is. It's really hard, and it's hard to take that on board as well sometimes. Even now, like, it's going to be okay. And generally it is okay, but, you can't know that when you're in the moment of it.
Yeah.
But it would be to, keep going. It will be okay. Because, generally it is okay.
Yeah. It's kind of like keeping your head up enough.
It sounds like the sort of thing you'd put on a meme, doesn't it? But with a picture of someone really clever on it. It is. It's knowing that there is light. There is light in all the darkness. There will be a period of light, and it's knowing that you can keep going towards it.
So I wonder sometimes about grief, whether we, as children, it's confusing, it's difficult, and we're told to shut down the feelings sometimes because it's inconvenient or difficult for other people to deal with. But then at what point can you start feeling the feelings? Because they're still there, whether you felt them or not. They're in there somewhere. The experience is held in the body. And I think sometimes we can be so used to numbing that we disconnect from the feelings altogether. And for me, I think that's where depression has kicked in the past, is almost like I can't feel these feelings because they're so unbearable that I just need to numb and get through the day. But that numbness is where there is no joy. That's where it's hard to find the light. But if we can go through the feelings and actually feel them, there is definitely light on the other side and freedom from those feelings. But hard to know that in the moment.
Oh, totally. And I think you're right, it's that disconnect. So hard sometimes thinking about it. I mean, I think it's a daily thing as well. I think, I would say there's not a day goes by that I don't think about my parents. At some point. And it's just, I think you were saying it's acknowledging those moments. And not shoveling them away. I think it's okay, I'll deal with that later.
Yeah.
Because you got to deal with it then sometimes. And it's not always easy if you're in like Morrison's and suddenly you start to feel it.
Yeah.
Because you've seen, I don't know, a packet of bourbons. We used to like bourbons when I was, or whatever it might be. Something springs to mind, and you start, it's amazing, the brain, isn't it? It's just has this capacity to flip things up now and again. So it's not always easy in those moments, but I think you do have to acknowledge them, because like you say, shoving them back down, shoving it back in the box, and hoping that it'll be, I'll leave that for another day. It's just no way to live. Yeah.
So it's kind of like small steps, small actions every day to walk towards something that's a bit more hopeful. Possibly.
Yeah, and grief is a journey that we just continue to go on. I think there's no end to it.
Yeah.
You can't say, I'm fine, I'm over that now.
Yeah.
It doesn't really work like that.
No.
Not in my experience. Maybe it does for some people. But I think it's for me, it's a continual journey that I'm going on. And some days there's hills and some days there's valleys. Some days it's just walking along a straight road. But, you know.
I wonder, do you find that writing your books has been, in a way, healing for you and cathartic?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, very cathartic. I mean, writing 150 days was hard. There was some dark days.
Yeah.
And I did have to take breaks.
Yeah.
I mean, I took a break for about 3 months at one point because it was. And do you know what? It wasn't even like there's scenes in it. There's a death scene in it, which is very graphic. But it wasn't those days. I was fine with those. It was other kind of memories that might pick up that were harder. So it's funny how your brain picks out certain things that upset you more than others. But so it was hard, but it was incredibly cathartic. And I've done a few talks recently and events where I've read passages from it, and that's been really cool as well. That's been really helpful to actually read it out loud to people.
So it's like acknowledging your experience. Like it did happen.
Yeah.
And it's okay that it happened, and it happens to lots of people.
Yeah.
But we don't necessarily talk about that stuff, the difficult stuff. Yeah.
No. And again, I mean, I think we're at a good place at the moment. I think we are talking about these things more, and there are, podcasts, for example, are a great way of, there's several podcasts about grief and stuff now, Griefcast and Grief Moments and some other ones. So we are getting better at talking about these things with each other, but there's a long way to go still, I think.
Yeah. And I suppose it's good to know how we can deal with it as early as possible with the kids. So that's really where I know that our listeners will be thinking about, well, how could I facilitate conversations with parents with their own children when they're going through difficult things. And when people ask me, I had someone come up to me recently and say, I'm working with a mum who's terminally ill with cancer. How do we tell the children who are 15 and 8? And I was like, I don't actually know that there's a right answer to that question.
No.
And I think it's individual, but I do think that, as you said, being straightforward and being honest at an age-appropriate level and using tools like your book to help, especially the younger children, understand through metaphor and explore through play even.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
The life and death cycle is really healing in itself.
Yeah, and I think schools are doing a lot more now. Our local primary is really good for that.
Yeah, brilliant. So what other bits of advice did you have, or what other things do you wish you'd known? And it doesn't necessarily need to be around the grief stuff, but maybe more generally.
I feel incredibly lucky, really. I do get to do really cool stuff. Would I have done anything differently? Maybe not. I guess maybe there's always those things where you think, I could have started doing that earlier. It's always one thing you think, I should have started writing earlier, or I should have started learning the guitar earlier, or I should have started doing podcasts 10 years ago, or I should have started. But things kind of tend to happen at the right times, I think. When you're in the right place. So I don't think I'd change anything, really. I think I'm really grateful for everything I've got and have, and actually I'm grateful for the experiences I've had, really, because they have made me the person I am, It's hard to say that you'd be grateful for going through grief, but to a certain extent there's a gratitude of going through it, of getting through it. Whereas obviously some people don't get through it. My dad didn't ever get through it.
Right.
So I think it's nice to be able to say that like I said earlier, it's a journey. I'm still going on it, but to still be going on the journey is a good thing.
It's a blessing, in a way, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So advice, I don't know.
It's quite interesting what you said about kind of wishing you'd started earlier. That sort of thing. we both said this morning when we met, you know, we sort of give it a go and see what happens. Type of people. But I think sometimes if you've experienced something very traumatic in childhood, it can be really hard to just try things. That you can get stuck in the freeze part of like, I don't know where to go next, which can be a real part of PTSD even. PTSD. So I guess there's part of just, you know, just giving things a go and acknowledging if you've experienced death or loss, that life is finite and we only have a certain amount of time, that we can do the things that we want to do or that light us up. Yeah.
I think actually death has taught me to do stuff. Not that, I mean, you know, life's too short kind of thing, which sounds so a bit cheesy, doesn't it? But it is.
It's true.
It's true. And actually, yeah, why not have a go at things and do things and follow your dreams sometimes? Doesn't matter if it doesn't work out. There are worse things. I sometimes think about when I'm in scenarios, I always think of what's the worst thing that can happen. You know, like if you're doing an interview, or I don't mean a podcast interview, I mean like a job interview, or you're going for something that you really, really want, or you're, I don't know, doing a gig, and what's the worst thing that can happen? And generally, it's not actually that bad. So why not just go for it? Don't be put off, because the worst case scenarios aren't normally that bad, unless you're doing a bungee jump or something.
Yeah. But I guess also, in the process of doing something creative or something that you want to do, you can end up impacting on lots of people in a really positive way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Making people's lives better.
Well, hopefully, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Even if it's just to take their minds off or something, you know.
A bit of light, a bit of joy.
Yeah. I've started, so in the last 2 years or so, I've dedicated myself, bar a few anti-Trump tweets, trying to be super positive on social media.
Okay.
Because I think, actually, as a platform, all social media platforms, they're so toxic. But actually, we can make those places better. There's so much good stuff. I mean, we wouldn't be doing this podcast without Twitter.
Yes, true.
I wouldn't be doing my podcast without Twitter. So I think, so I'm trying to dedicate myself to doing more positive things and maybe having more positive impact on other people's lives if I can, rather than just being noisy and arguing and shouting at people because I don't agree with them. Yeah, absolutely. That's a lovely thing to dedicate time to. I think everybody did more of that. Yeah, exactly. And I think we could all be a bit kinder to each other. So that's kind of something I'm trying to push forward in the next few years if I can. Positivity on social media.
So everyone should give you a follow then for
please give me a follow. You'll get lots of positive tweets from me. Yeah, definitely.
And that's something everyone needs in their lives. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because it's, you know, we are going through slightly darker times. I mean, politically we are. So I think, you know, we're at each other quite a lot, and it's always exacerbated on social media, isn't it? So yeah, I think it'd be nice to make those kind of forums nicer places.
Definitely, and I suppose the thing that we all have in common is that we need relationships and we need connection.
Yeah, it's such a simple thing, really. I try and follow back everybody that follows me, which is a bit of a weird thing. But I want it to be a two-way thing.
Yeah.
Because it's all very well people just following me and me not following them, but then you kind of have I'm just talking and they're not able to talk back. Or I'm not able to see what they're saying. So I made it a bit of an effort a conscious effort when I started using these something to make sure I follow back as many people as I can, because also it means I've got a really weird timeline.
Very eclectic,
yeah.
I imagine.
But, you know, because I just think it's a two-way street connection, isn't it? It's all very well people just come into, I don't know, logging on just to see what I say, but I want to see what they're saying as well. Yeah. So, yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Giles.
Well, no, thank you for having me on.
Thank you. It's really interesting to hear about your experiences and
Well, thank you very much. This is great. I think this is going to be a great podcast.
Oh, I'm glad to hear you say that.
It?
Thank you so much. Well, we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
And I highly recommend anyone who is working with children or families to get hold of a copy of Little Bell and the Moon, because it is a really lovely story and helps children to explore death and mortality through metaphor in a really safe and practical way. Can be used as a really nice tool. So do that. And also remember to give Giles a follow on Twitter and he will follow you back. So thanks so much for tuning in for today, and look forward to catching you again on the next podcast.